Disappear, nobody needs you. My stepdaughter screamed. Her mom Nodde. I left quietly, carrying nothing but silence and a broken heart. But when her real dad returned to manipulate her, I came back not for revenge, but to protect the girl who once erased me. What happened next uncovered lies, saved futures, and redefined what it really means to be a father. Welcome to Storytime Reddit, everyone. I never thought there would come a day when I'd be kicked out of the home I once called my safe place by the very people I had spent years trying to love. It was a normal evening except for one thing: the air at dinner was suffocating. Stella, my wife's daughter from a previous relationship, sat across from me, quietly tapping on her phone, even though we had long agreed no phones at the table. I gave her a gentle reminder, just a soft nudge. Without hesitation, she slammed her phone down and snapped, "Why do you always try to control everything I do? Disappear, nobody needs you." I froze. I wasn't sure what I expected from Delilah, my wife, maybe a look of support, a word to calm things down, or just some sense of fairness. But instead, she quietly placed her fork down and said, her voice like a blade, "Maybe we really would be better off if you left." I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I just stood up, walked upstairs, grabbed my old duffel bag, and started packing, shirt by shirt, sock by sock, and somehow my hands didn't even shake. The strange part was I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel sad. I felt empty, like something inside me had shattered and I was too drained to pick up the pieces. No one came upstairs. No one asked what I was doing. When I came back down, Stella was gone. Delilah stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, eyes staring through me like I was a stranger. "You're really just going to leave?" she asked, her voice sharp. I met her eyes and said calmly, "Didn't you just say everyone would be better off if I left? I'm respecting that." She opened her mouth, then stopped. Whatever she wanted to say was swallowed whole. I told her I'd be staying with Ryan, my best friend, and that I'd find something more permanent soon. Before walking out the door, I looked at the woman I once thought was my soulmate and said quietly, "Stella's words hurt. But hearing you agree with her, that broke something in me I don't think can be fixed." That night, Ryan didn't ask questions. He just opened the door, led me to the guest room, and laid out a warm blanket and a soft pillow like he already knew I'd be needing it. I took a sleeping pill from my old travel kit, turned off my phone, and laid down in the unfamiliar dark as silence swallowed me whole. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains and pulled me back to consciousness. I picked up my phone, 13 missed calls, 8 from Delilah, 3 from Stella, 2 from my sister Quinn. I didn't answer any of them. I just sat there in that strange room, watching cars move below and thinking about the photo frames back home, the ones where my face had been carefully cut out, like I had never existed at all. Maybe those gaps had always been there. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to see them. That morning, I went back to the house just to grab a few personal things I'd left behind. I wasn't planning to talk to anyone, just get in and get out. But the moment I stepped into the living room, I knew something was wrong. The house was too quiet. No hum from the washing machine, no clinking in the kitchen, not even the low murmur of the television Delilah always left on. But it wasn't the silence that stopped me. It was the photo wall. The pictures were all still there, lining the mantel above the fireplace, but something felt off. I walked closer and picked up the frame from our Yellowstone trip last summer, the one where I'd smiled wide between Delilah and Stella, our hands linked like a real family. But now, I wasn't in the photo. My image had been cut out, replaced by a blank, ghostly void between the two people I once considered my whole world. I stepped back and scanned the wall. One by one, I saw it. Every single photo had been edited. My presence erased like I had never existed. In my hand, the coffee I brought was turning cold. My fingers trembled, part rage, part heartbreak. Upstairs, I heard a door close softly. Stella's. Her footsteps moved toward the stairs, paused, then continued. When she came into view, her eyes were locked on her phone. She didn't even look at me. "Good morning," I said. No reply. She walked past me like I was invisible. And the silence she left behind was deliberate, the kind that makes you feel like even breathing is an intrusion. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank space on the photo wall. I thought of movie nights, late-night homework sessions, the night she called me crying at 1 a.m. after her first heartbreak. I had been there. I was the one she leaned on. I was the one she asked to help pick out her prom dress, while Delilah looked on with pride. I don't know when it changed. But I know this coldness wasn't just teenage mood swings. It had roots. It started last week, when I offered to help with a chemistry assignment. She snapped, "Stop pretending you care. You're not my real dad." I'd heard things like that before, But this time, her tone was sharp, deliberate, and Delilah was right there. She heard it and said nothing. That silence felt like a choice, a quiet betrayal. The days that followed confirmed it. Dishes left on the table like I was expected to clean them. Conversations that ended the moment I walked into a room. Doors slammed harder than needed, and now the photos. Not one, not two, all of them. Every memory where I once was, now deliberately erased. Maybe that's the truth. Maybe I was never really part of this family, just a placeholder, a comma in a story that wasn't mine to begin with. But if that's how they saw me, they seemed to forget who kept the lights on, who made the house feel like home, who stood quietly in the background, making sure it all held together. And now, they've torn it all down with their own hands. I still hadn't turned my phone back on since I left their house, but the next morning, Ryan sat down at the breakfast table and showed me a photo that had just been posted on Facebook. It was him, Miles, Stella's biological father, sitting at a familiar restaurant in the city, grinning like he hadn't ghosted his daughter 3 years ago. I didn't feel shocked. I felt still, like everything that had been swirling in my head had suddenly clicked into place. Stella's sudden change, Delilah's cold distance, the out-of-nowhere cruelty, the quiet and deliberate irascirate all led to one thing: Miles was back. I powered my phone on for the first time in 2 days and was immediately swallowed by the flood of notifications. 13 missed calls, 27 texts, 4 unheard voicemails. Among them were messages from Delilah, starting angry, then frantic, and finally ending with one short line that made my stomach drop. "There's something you need to know. It's about Stella. Please call me." Before I could respond, my sister Quinn showed up at Ryan's with 2 hot coffees in hand. She didn't say much, just gave me that look that said, "It's your turn to listen now," so I did. She told me she'd seen Stella yesterday at the mall, sitting with a man she didn't recognize at first, but then they laughed. And the way Stella tilted her head, the way her eyes lit up, that's when Quinn knew. It was Miles. She didn't approach, just watched from a distance. But what scared her most wasn't his presence, it was the way Stella looked at him, like something magical was about to happen. The same look she had last summer when she got her acceptance letter for that elite summer program. I dropped my head into my hands. Everything was unraveling. Quinn said Miles had been messaging Stella for months, telling her he'd changed, promising he'd be a real father this time. I checked Stella's Instagram, something I rarely did, and my chest clenched. Her most recent post was a photo of the two of them with the caption, "Time for real family." I didn't know what hurt more, those words or that smile she used to save just for me. Ryan, who had been silent until now, reminded me of the last time Miles showed up when Stella was 13. He brought gifts, promised to stay, whispered sweet nothings, and disappeared 2 weeks later without a trace. Stella didn't leave her room for days. It took Delilah and me months to bring her back to herself. And now, it was happening all over again. A new message came in from Delilah. This one was different. It was the first time she admitted the truth. Miles had been trying to convince Stella to move in with him, to invest her college fund into some sketchy startup he claimed had guaranteed returns. Delilah wrote, "I tried to stop her, but she thinks I'm jealous of him being a better dad. I don't know what else to do. She trusts him, but she's always trusted you more than anyone. Please, come back." I put my phone down, my chest heavy. The things they'd said to me still echoed in my mind. But beneath all that pain was a 16-year-old girl being led into a trap she had already fallen into once. And this time, if I didn't act, no one would be there to pull her out. I didn't return to that house looking for forgiveness. I came back because I needed clarity, because something about Stella's sudden change didn't sit right with me. When I knocked on the door, Delilah opened it almost immediately, like she had been standing just behind it, waiting. She didn't look angry anymore. She didn't look distant. She looked exhausted, like the weight of pretending everything was okay had finally crushed her spirit. "He asked her for the money," she said without hesitation, not even giving me a second to settle in. "Her college fund." I stood still, letting those words sink in. Delilah continued, voice trembling. "He told her he's starting some tech company in California. He promised her that if she invested now, she'd make enough to go to any university she wanted. She believes him." I asked, "Where is she now?" Delilah's eyes dropped to the floor. "She's getting coffee with him, again." I sat at the kitchen table, her old kitchen table, the one I had sat at for dinners, for homework help, for birthday candle sand, asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked like she wanted to disappear. "I thought I could manage it. I thought I could keep him away. But then you and Stella had that fight, and I panicked. I chose her side because I thought if I didn't, I'd lose her completely to him." Before I could say anything more, the front door opened. Stella stepped inside, holding a paper coffee cup, her eyes going wide when she saw me. She didn't glare. She didn't roll her eyes. She just froze, her face unsure, hesitant. I stood up. "You're dropping all your AP classes?" I asked gently. "What about the scholarships?" She looked away. "Plans changed," she said, barely above a whisper. "Miles," Dad says. "Miles," I said, steady but firm, "is not the one who stayed up all night helping you study. He's not the one who sat with you when you cried over that rejection letter. He's not the one who showed you Pev every single time. I did." She didn't speak. Her hands just tightened around the cup. I took out my laptop and placed it on the table. Here's his credit report. His incomplete business registration, 3 pending lawsuits from past scams, and this, I slid over the last document, is from a grandmother whose granddaughter lost her future after trusting him. Stella's hand trembled as she pulled the laptop toward her. She read everything in silence, no denials, no excuses, just stillness, and then tears. "He told me we could be a real family," she said, her voice cracking. "He told me if I really wanted to choose him, I had to let go of the person who replaced him." Delilah moved forward instinctively, but Stella stepped back. I think I knew. Deep down I knew. But I wanted to believe him so badly. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Miles. She looked at it for a long moment, then powered it off. "I need some time," she whispered, and turned to head upstairs. We let her go. That afternoon, Delilah and I sat in the kitchen really talking for the first time in weeks. About what we'd done wrong, about what we still wanted to fix, about how scared we both were. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed again. A message from Stella. "I messed up. Everything's so confusing. But, Dad, can we talk? Not about Miles? Not about school? Just, do you remember when you used to take me for ice cream after dance class? I want that. Just once." I stared at her words, then looked out the window. The lights of our old ice cream shop were still glowing in the dusk, and I knew I'd be there. Because in the end, being a parent isn't about biology. It's about who stays, especially when it's hardest to. That night at the ice cream shop changed everything. Stella arrived about 10 minutes late. I was just about to leave when I saw Delilah's car pull into the lot. Stella sat inside for what felt like forever, clutching her phone, her eyes glued to the screen like she was silently wrestling 1,000 different outcomes. When she finally opened the door and walked toward me, I saw something I hadn't seen in her in a long time. It wasn't defiance, and it wasn't shame. It was fear, raw, honest fear mixed with a fragile sliver of hope. She sat down across from me at the little metal table where I had already placed 2 cups of ice cream. One was coconut chocolate, the other mint chiffer old favorite, even though she always complained it never lived up to how good it looked online. She stirred her spoon through the melting surface in silence, then finally spoke in a voice so soft it barely carried across the table. "Miles asked me to help him find investors, starting with my friend's parents. He said if I could convince them, they'd believe in him too." My stomach turned. I asked her gently, "Did you say yes?" She shook her head slowly. "Almost. He told me that if I helped him this time, he'd prove he really was my dad, that we could start over. I know it sounds stupid now, but I wanted it to be true. I didn't get angry. I didn't criticize her. All I felt was a quiet kind of pain, the kind that sinks into your bones. Not because she'd almost been tricked again, but because a 16-year-old girl shouldn't have to bear the burden of her father's manipulations. It's never wrong to want to be loved, I told her. The wrong comes from those who weaponize that need. Her eyes welled up. "I have proof," she said, and unlocked her phone. She showed me text after text, Miles sending shady pitches to parents, hyping fake investment returns, even sending her links to a bogus-looking website. There was a voice recording too, instructing Stella to tell her friends to get their parents involved. But when I looked into her eyes, I didn't see confusion anymore. I saw clarity. "If you want," I said, "we'll take all of this to the right people. This isn't just a mistake, it's a crime." She nodded firmly. "I don't want anyone else to fall for it, especially not my friends." That night, I made the calls. Quinn reached out to a friend in the Securities Commission. Ryan contacted someone in the DA's office. We weren't alone. I wasn't the forgotten stepdad anymore. I was Stella's protector. We put together a plan. Miles had set up a dinner with investors at a fancy restaurant. He had no clue the entire pitch would be recorded. Stella wouldn't be there, but she held the final piece, every text, every receipt, every lie. And this time, she would be the one to bring it all down. That evening, I wore a plain button-down shirt, and took a seat in a high-end restaurant that felt more like a courtroom than a dining space. Around me were people who had once been on the verge of being victims, but who were now fully aware and united. Miles had no idea what was coming. He strutted in with that signature smug confidence, like the whole world was just one big opportunity waiting to serve him. He strolled from table to table, shaking hands, flashing his fake charm, calling people by first names like they were longtime friends. He dropped buzzwords like Silicon Valley connections and guaranteed returns as if he were offering gold instead of lies. I sat quietly at the far end, pretending to be another interested parent. I took notes in a small leather-bound notebook, my posture casual, but my mind sharp-fixated on Stella's face from the night before as she typed out every damning message Miles had ever sent her. Her hands had trembled, but her eyes were clear. When the appetizers were served, I placed my pen down and stood up. My voice calm, I said, "Before we continue, there are a few guests who'd like to join us tonight." And with perfect timing, the restaurant doors opened. 2 federal agents and a state investigator walked in, their presence slicing through the silence like a blade. Parents around the table shifted in their seats, some adjusting jackets, others pulling out phones. But no one moved to stop what was coming. Miles's expression twisted from curiosity to confusion, then crumpled into full-blown panic. "What is this?" he barked, voice rising. "It's the truth," I said. "It's consequences. It's justice." The agent stepped forward and began to read him his rights. Miles protested, shouting about misunderstandings and loyalty, before shoving a server aside and making a break for the door. He only made it a few feet before security took him down. As he was being cuffed, he thrashed around, desperate for someone he knew to believe him. His eyes found mine and he spat out, "She'll forgive me. I'm her father. You're nothing." I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. Then, a parent beside me gently touched my shoulder and whispered, "She picked the right one." On the way home, I stopped by the house. Delilah was in the living room, tension radiating from her. Stella sat on the stairs, watching me. "It's over," I said. "He can't hurt anyone anymore." Stella pulled a small box from her jacket inside, old photos of her and Miles. "I was going to burn these," she said, "but now I think they should go with the evidence." I nodded. "The strongest proof is that you stood up for yourself. That's what matters most." The next morning, she handed me an envelope. "He asked me to mail this last week startup investment forms. I figured you'd want to submit it." I asked if she wanted to come with me. She smiled, real and open. "Can we get ice cream after?" I nodded. And that was the moment I knew I didn't need to fight for a place in this family anymore. Stella had already given it to me. After everything that happened after the arrest, the lies, the betrayal, and the courtroom revelations, what stayed with me most wasn't the day Miles was led away in handcuffs. It wasn't the sight of him panicking when he realized the walls were closing in, or even the satisfaction of watching justice finally catch up to someone who had hurt so many people. No, what stayed with me the most were the quiet shifts, the small, almost invisible things that slowly returned to our lives without fanfare like they had never left. That's what healing looked like. Not some dramatic gesture, not a big emotional scene, but the soft, slow rhythm of normalcy creeping back into a house that had gone cold. Stella started calling me Dad again, not all at once, not with tears in her eyes or a grand speech. It happened gradually. One day, she sat across from me at the table and asked, "Dad, can you help me review my college essay?" I didn't even react at first. Another night, while scrolling through majors, she looked up and asked, "What major do you think fits me best?" And again, it was Dad. No hesitation, no correction. Just that word, spoken like it belonged to me. And in that moment, I realized she was giving it back. Not out of pity or guilt, but because she meant it. A few days later, I was sorting through old case files when Stella came over with a small photo box. She placed it on the table gently, her expression calm. "I've picked the ones I want to keep," she said. "The rest, we should probably give to the investigators." I opened it. Inside were pictures of her and Miles, separated from the rest, not torn or burned, just bundled and set aside. It wasn't about rage or revenge. It was her taking back control of her story. One night, while Delilah and I sat in the living room, Stella started talking about her college plans. She told us she wanted to study psychology to help kids who'd been hurt by people they were supposed to trust. I listened, quietly overwhelmed. I didn't know if it was pride or peace, but it settled deep in my chest because for weeks I thought I had lost my place in her life. But here she was, slowly bringing me back. Little by little, things felt normal again. Family dinners returned. Phones stayed off the table. Stella talked. Delilah laughed. I fixed drawer handles and made her favorite pasta. One morning, Stella came downstairs with a white envelope. I found this in my drawer, she said. It was the investment paperwork Miles had her sign. I want to give this to the investigators, but only if you come with me. I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place. She'd already given it back. I used to think that justice reached its highest point the day Miles was let out of that upscale restaurant in handcuffs. The day the headlines finally caught up with the truth, labeling him for what he really was, a manipulative fraud who preyed on people under the mask of charm and redemption. But in reality, the truest, most meaningful form of justice didn't come with flashing lights or breaking news. It came quietly, in the soft moments that slipped back into our lives when we weren't even sure they ever would. Like that evening, when I found Stella sitting at the dining table with our old family album open in front of her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't making a big show of anything. She was simply peeling away the damage, meticulously wiping down photo corners and placing my pictures back where they used to be, in the spots where I had once been deliberately cut out. I didn't speak. I stood just a few steps away, letting her have that moment, letting her decide. Because sometimes, being called family isn't the same as being chosen to belong in someone's memories again. And when you are chosen, that's when it matters the most. The next morning, Stella came downstairs early, wearing one of her old high school t-shirts and carrying a folder of essay drafts. I think I'm going to write about all of this, she said. Not to blame anyone, just to show what it looks like when you learn to trust yourself again. How to stop falling for promises that don't mean anything. I looked at her differently, not like the stepdad who had once been edited out of every frame, but as someone who had stayed quietly and consistently when it would have been easier to walk away. And in the end, I got to witness something extraordinary, a young woman rediscovering her own power. Delilah came into the kitchen not long after, her hair damp from a shower and a therapy book tucked under one arm. She smiled at me, genuine, though tired. What's for dinner tonight? I shrugged. Pasta. Stella's request. Delilah nodded. Then you're helping her cook, she said, with the ease of a family that's been healing quietly, piece by piece. That night, the three of us sat down for dinner. No heavy talks, no one mentioned Miles, we just shared stories, passed dishes, laughed a little. Stella even teased me about teaching classes on fraud spotting, and I told her to leave me a 5-star review first. But what hit me most was after dinner, when she softly asked, "Can I read you my essay draft?" Her voice was a little shaky, but her words were strong. And when she reached the final line, my chest tightened. She said, "My dad wasn't the one who gave me life, but he's the one who stayed, and sometimes that matters more than anything else." The next morning, I took her to school to submit it. We walked through the park afterward, just the two of us. She talked about helping other students Miles had approached, even suggesting a seminar on financial safety. Stella wasn't surviving anymore. She was leading, growing, owning her story. And when the court invitation came for Miles's sentencing, she didn't hesitate. She stood in that courtroom, read her statement with clarity and calm, and came back to me saying, "I don't need revenge. I'm living well. That's enough." That night, she smiled and said, "We should take a new family photo." I joked, "You posting it online?" She shook her head. "Number, I'm printing it, hanging it right where the old one used to be, but this time, no one's getting cut out." And in that moment, I knew this was the ending we all deserved.